We're delighted to have Dr. Esteban del Rio with us, professor of communication studies and a great lover of Ignatian spirituality. And so before he leads us from his beautiful backyard, I just invite you to find a comfortable position you can be in for about 10 or 15 minutes. Take a deep breath. Congratulate yourself on being here today. And then I'll hand it over to Esteban. Esteban, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron and Kenny. And just like with my students, if I freeze, I'll come right back. I'm really grateful to share a little bit of time with you in this prayerful reflection here on a Thursday, which is close to the end of my work week. I have participated in many examens, but never led one. So I'm hoping and praying for some grace and for some that my words land gently and welcome to your own, wandering mind. My mind is especially wandering right now because I just taught. I just finished teaching my class, and so students aren't as willing to participate, especially in a lower division class on Zoom. So I end up doing a lot more talking than I normally would. But I'm here in our little house in Mount Helix. There's lots of birds you might hear in the background, bush tits and scrub jays and mockingbirds and red-shouldered hawks and crows who chase the hawks away, and airplanes, it seems. With fewer commercial flights all around the world, I noticed many more sounds that I wouldn't have heard otherwise. So you might hear some things in the background in my home. Hopefully, maybe you have a soundtrack that Kenny provided. But we're going to spend the next moments together moving through the 5 steps of the examen from Ignatian spirituality. And I'll try to make this a little different by offering a few stories and reflections from myself to frame what we're going to do together. The first thing I'd like to invite you to do is to bring God into your presence. Invite God in to your mind, your activities, your sense of self, your sense of others that you might be holding right now. And when I think about inviting God in, I think a little bit about an idea that I used to talk a lot about at USD, which is the idea of radical hospitality. Some of you in the room have heard me talk about that before. But radical hospitality has invitation as its core, as we invite God into our presence, into our thoughts of ourselves, thoughts of others. Invitation is an active act. It's something that we have to erupt in ourselves to invite God, even though God's always there. We have to awaken ourselves and invite God into our presence. We have to recognize and open our eyes to that God was there already. It might be less a verb of inviting and more of a verb of recognition that God is with us in our thoughts, with our sense of self and sense of others. When I used to talk about radical hospitality, it was kind of based on this idea of invitation or welcome. In a lot of our work at the university, we do a lot of inviting and a lot of welcoming. And as you know, I was doing work advancing equity and social justice at the USD. And the idea of radical hospitality transcends the traditional boundaries of welcome and invitation, the boundaries of host and guest. the kind of hierarchical relationship there, and instead connotes change, that we are changed by encountering each other. So radical hospitality is less of a onboarding, like welcome aboard, like onboarding God into into ourself right now. Welcome aboard, God. The ship is sailing. I'd like to show you around. Radical hospitality connotes the change that comes with the encounter. So right now, how is our recognition of God as with us? How does that change us? How does that change us? I would suggest it changes God too. God coming to earth, walking amongst us, had to have changed God. This is my daughter's. Um, theory about the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. God is always with us, so let us recognize that and find the change that causes in us. Next, I invite you to reflect on the gifts and privileges and graces that we may have noticed today, that we might notice right now. And to reflect on the gratitude, the joy that those gifts and privileges bring us. I am at home. I'm incredibly grateful that I get to be at home during this time. Home with my children, home with my wife, getting to know my dog a lot better, more than I wanted to know. But I'm grateful for this time that we have had together in the midst of the tumult and the suffering and the joblessness and the death, the destabilization. I recognize what I need to be grateful for, that I have been home with my family. It's something I've noticed more since I've been home. And I've come to be more grateful for the time with my family. I'm challenged a little bit as to why I didn't notice it before. Gratitude is about what we notice. The comfort that we might be experiencing right now, the quiet, the time away. The opportunity to reflect. The times we've helped others as they've experienced suffering or death or displacement, destabilization. Build gratitude about those opportunities. Next, I would invite you to review your day. Time is a small circle, people have been saying lately. Each day starts to blend into the one that came before and the one that might be next. I didn't wear shoes today, I probably won't wear shoes tomorrow. At the same time, even though a lot of our days are feeling the same here during this world historic unique time, waking up is always something new. What did we wake up with in terms of our hopes for the day? What were some of the worries or anxieties that we woke up with? What were some things we were excited to do? Maybe there was something that we weren't so excited to do and were able to put off for another day. What was something that delighted us, surprised us today? For me, it was my lunch. I made a great omelet, a side of kimchi, and arugula, olive oil, pepper, almond, and cranberry salad, which is my go-to. And I sat before I taught, had my lunch, and it delighted me. It was wonderful. I ate that most days. Think about what we woke up with today, the fears, the dread, the hope, the excitement. How did it turn out? What's something today that we're proud of? Did we accompany somebody today? From this review, maybe there's some emotions that came up. Maybe there's pride, or maybe there's disappointment. Maybe we didn't get the chance to accompany somebody. I gave a talk at Lewis University in Chicagoland. I gave their convocation address in 2017, and I was invited to all of the events, during convocation. And one lunch, I ended up in a long conversation with someone who worked there for 40 years. He was a student there, and he was a vice president of student affairs at the time. And I remember asking him if he ever disagreed with a decision that was made at the university. How did he? He'd been to the place for so long. Like, what did he do about it? And he said, I believe in the wisdom of the group. I believe that I might not be right. He said, but so long as I've been invited into the conversation, so long as my opinion was heard with seriousness, if the decision was made the other way, he would have supported it. Having the chance to accompany somebody and be invitational to their ideas makes a big difference. Were you able to accompany someone? What kind of emotions might have come up with that, or not having that opportunity? Based on your day, maybe there's one emotion that comes up from a review. Right? That one emotion. We could ask for some wisdom from God about where that emotion comes from, what it's speaking to. Maybe that emotion is anger. Right? Maybe we haven't been invited into a conversation that we would have liked to have been. To help us to know what is hurting in us that caused anger. If that emotion is joy, how do we do more of that? How do we experience joy more? Maybe we can call on God, call on ourselves to reflect on joy and where we can find it. And lastly, we want to look to the future. We want to look to this evening and tomorrow in the near term. But maybe something happened today and an emotion we experienced helps us reframe a larger future, a longer term future. It helps us to discern how do we grow more grace in our life and in the world. How do we accompany those who experience marginalization? How do we listen with compassion to those we disagree with? How might we enter fraught conversations at work or in life as more of a listener, more of someone who accompanies, more of someone who invites, more of someone who consults, with more transparency, more candor. Family, kind of in the St. Patrick's Day season anyway. Not quite corned beef and cabbage, but I'll do some mashed potatoes and some sausage. And I'm going to remember my time with you all as I sit down with my family, as I've done nearly every night in my house for about a year. Sometimes it's in these, routines, this radical routine of being at home, that a lot of us are finding the meaning showing up, and it's definitely a stamp of approval for monastic life. I hope a lot of us are experiencing, routines. It might feel like a prison, but perhaps it's exactly the kind of platform that we need to see the goodness in the world and find ways that we can intervene. So thank you for spending time with me, and I appreciate the invitation.
Well, and thank you so much for saying yes to it and being with us and providing that wisdom and that guidance about how can we accompany others and how is God inviting us to that. Thank you so much for being with us and for leading our group into that deeper sense of wisdom.